Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Northport, A View from Here. My name is Gene Matthews and I'll be your host today. Visiting with us we have Sam Jones, who's the Director of Community Development here in Northport. And Sam is going to give us a history lesson on the city of Northport. Northport goes back about 50 years or so, and which probably is pretty young for a city in today's years. And we're going to hear how we got where we are today. Sam, welcome to the show. And where did it all start? How did it start? Who started it?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Gene. I'm glad I can be here. The people who started it was the General Development Corporation. Mm-hmm. And the way they started it is they completed their first master plan, I'm going to say about 50 years ago. And the master plan for Northport is very similar to other master plan cities across Florida, for example, Cape Coral.
Right. Okay. The original master plan, how would you describe the city of Northport today?
Well, General Development, when they did the original master plan, they planned Northport for a full-service city. For example, the '94 master plan showed areas for 15 elementary schools, 5 junior high schools, 3 senior high schools, 42 churches. Not only can they educate children, but they also planned for cemeteries, medical complexes, and of course the commercial industrial areas for people to shop and work, and also the residential areas, which included a lot of neighborhood commercial areas. Mm-hmm. This master plan was for a full-service city, which also included water and sewer lines, fire station sites, police station sites, and government type of buildings. It's interesting to note, though, Gene, that the master plan included an area of Northport called Myakka Estates. But the state agencies came in, I believe it was about 1996, and bought this area for conservation purposes, which is good. It was about 8,000 acres were purchased by the state. Well, what happened when the state did that is they eliminated from the city's tax base approximately 3,000 dwelling units and roughly 4 million square feet of commercial and industrial land that was taken out of the tax base. Well, what that meant for the city was, and these numbers are general, but they make the point, the city lost or loses each year approximately $155,000 because these land uses or these development potential area was taken out of the city's tax base. To make the point even further, the fire district loses each year approximately $120,000. To put it another way, when the tax base, when the uses were taken out of the tax base, the fire district loses approximately 7% each year. The annexations, which we'll get into a little bit later, of course, hopefully they will eventually replace this lost tax base and the revenues from that tax base. And hopefully we'll put the city in a better revenue position. I'd like to add, though, Gene, that Northport's lucky. We have, or we are one of the few cities that has a state forest wholly within the incorporated boundaries of the city.
Now, I remember when this came about, is the city was very glad to get this within the city boundaries, and it was the right thing to do because it encompasses a very sensitive piece of land that's adjacent and abuts the Myakka River, and so as such it really adds to it. Now, the tax money that's lost, that's undeveloped land, so there was a potential for a greater amount of tax dollars, I assume, once that land was all developed.
Oh, absolutely, Gene.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about the tax dollars that were lost from the undeveloped land.
Right, and it's not a question that the city gave the land away. They had no choice. General Development wanted to sell it because of the bankruptcy, and the state wanted it, and we wanted them to buy it. So I think it's a win-win situation for all of us, regardless of the tax situation. 1960 probably is a starting point for some real change in the city of Northport. And I guess between the years 1960 and 1990, there's been a steady progression of change. And perhaps you could just give us a little rundown on what those changes are.
Sure, I'd be glad to, Gene. And that's a great question, and it's really important to understand the answer in terms of appreciating Northport's situation today. General Development Corporation, after they got the city planned and had some roads constructed, the corporation actually marketed the lots to individuals from the northern portion of America. Their target market was the middle-income working folks who were planning for a place to retire. Well, what this means is that in the very early days of Northport, the population was mostly retirees or empty nesters. Then in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and actually continuing today, more young people are moving to Northport. And the reason for that is there's two basic reasons. The first one is that the land cost in Northport is much less than a similar lot located in North Sarasota County or in Charlotte County. The other reason, quite frankly, is Northport is blessed with two interchanges on I-75. So the access to I-75 is excellent, and it's easy for the young families who work either north or south of us to get to work very quickly. That movement of young families has dramatically changed the city's social makeup.
Can you give us an example?
Sure.
I think we started out, when I came down here first in 1972, I think we were about 67 or 68 years was the median age in the city of Northport. How has that changed since then?
Well, Gene, I'll give you some hard numbers, and these come from the U.S. Census. In 1970, the average age was 64. In 1980, the average age decreased to 59. In 1990, the trend continues, and the average age was 48 years old. And in 1995, the Bureau of Economic and Business Research in Tallahassee estimates that the average age continued to fall to 46. Gene, what this means is that the city is no longer exclusively for retirees and empty nesters, but the city has become diversified. It now means that the city needs facilities that typically aren't used by the retirees or empty nesters. And it also means that the city has to recognize the responsibilities to the future for the provision of other services for the younger population. For example, a new high school is under construction today. I understand that's a multi-million-dollar project.
That's 50, equipped and all, about $52 million
Wow.
with all the equipment inside and the building itself.
It's a wonderful project.
Oh, magnificent.
Another example is the Boys and Girls Club is putting on a new expansion of their facility. Also, as just recently happened, the city built and opened the skate park, which is certainly for the younger generation. And the city is...
You wouldn't catch me there.
Me either, Gene. The city's also going to have very soon under construction 2 new ball fields next to the Glen Allen Elementary School. And also the city continues to improve the environmental part. So you can see that a lot of the facilities today are geared to the younger population that's moving here.
Now, how does the city plan to, before I go on, I just want to say that grand opening for that Boys and Girls Club is going to be sometime near in the middle of March, towards the end of March, and we're real pleased about that. We're going to come back in a minute and we'll finish up with this topic. So thank you very much.
Okay.
And just a moment, we'll be right back.
Have you seen Northport lately? Take a minute and take a look.
We really do enjoy nature, and we found it all here, right in our own backyard. Love fishing and boating on the Mayaca. You never know what you might see out there. We toured the whole state of Florida and found that Northport had everything that we wanted.
There's a lot of natural beauty, and there's a lot of wildlife here. I love the open spaces, and I love the quiet.
If you're intrigued by what you just saw, pay us a visit and you'll see a lot more.
Welcome back to the second part of Northport, A View from Here. When we left the last segment, we were speaking about the change in age group and all the new things that we need to provide services for these age groups. What kind of planning does the city do, Sam, that takes care of this, and what's the process?
Well, Gene, back in, I'm going to say it was 1995-96, the city embarked on a planning effort really to update the city's comprehensive plan. Now, that's also known as the Growth Management Plan. The effort, the planning effort, or the city planning effort, really must reflect the community's desires and visions, how the community wants to grow. If the plan doesn't, then that planning document will merely sit on the shelf and collect dust, and nobody will look at it, and it will be a useless document. The plan is important because it is one of the major tools for the citizens of Northport to define and control the destiny of their city. To accomplish the task, the city established a number of citizen advisory committees, and their charge was to define the community vision and to develop strategies to resolve problems. Through that effort, we defined a number of issues. The first is simply that the city needs to diversify its tax base. The second issue that was identified is that the city needs to also diversify its housing choice. Back in 95-96, and still today, the predominant type of housing in Northport is single family. To diversify your tax base, you need living units that are more affordable for the young working families or the labor force to live in, and that is typically your apartments. So to diversify the tax base also had to diversify the type of housing in the city.
Okay, what about economic planning? Why is that important to the city?
Well, that's a good question, Gene, and that really gets down to one of the main issues. In the middle 90s, when we were updating the plan, we found that the city had approximately 5% of the land area that could be devoted to apartments, commercial, industrial type of development that would provide job opportunities for citizens and would also diversify the tax base. Without the tax base diversification, the tax burden would fall on the homeowners. Now remember that those homeowners are retirees, many on fixed income, and the homeowners are, the Northport homeowners also typically the young family, the wife and husband working, and typically don't make a lot of money.
Two-income families.
Absolutely, to make ends meet. Let me try to put this in some sort of context. The American Planning Association conducted a survey of cities around the country. The survey showed the land use ratios for cities with populations of less than 100,000 people. What that survey showed us was that in those cities, approximately 17% of the total land area of the city was devoted to commercial and industrial type of development. And of course, again, that type of development provides jobs and diversifies the tax base. Well, as you can see, the city of Northport, remember the magic number 5%, city of Northport is 12% below the results of the American Planning Association research. Gene, these numbers indicate that the city's tax base is out of balance. The issue needs to be addressed to ensure the financial sustainability and economic health of the city. This happened for a number of reasons, and there's three basic reasons. The first is that General Development Corporation, they went bankrupt. As part of that bankruptcy settlement, 768 dwelling units were taken out of the tax base. Myakka Estates, again, as I mentioned earlier, that reduced the tax base by 3,000 dwelling units and approximately 4 million square feet of commercial industrial. Also, Panacea, which is a development in the city, approximately 2,000 acres, they reduced their number of dwelling units by 1,800 and reduced the industrial square footage by approximately 1.8 million square feet. What this does is it greatly reduces the city's tax base. The annexations that we'll get into a little bit later are merely a way to replace that lost tax base and hopefully improve it.
That's a substantial loss in tax base when the commercial portion of a tax bill they cost the city a lot less money versus a residential unit, which costs the city a lot more in police, fire, ambulance, and all the other services that they get. Did the city identify any strategies to resolve these issues?
Yeah, we sure did, Gene. And there are two basic approaches or strategies. The first was to institute a very aggressive economic development effort to attract new businesses and jobs, in essence to diversify the tax base. And that has been ongoing now for about 2 years, and the results of that effort has been the creation of 650 new jobs and an increase in the taxable value of the city of approximately $20 million. Another strategy identified in 1997 was, quite frankly, to annex new land that would provide the opportunities to, number one, diversify the city's tax base and to provide areas for additional housing choices.
Maybe you could just give us a rundown on how this, is accomplished through these annexation procedures.
Okay, Gene, let me do that by describing the annexations and their size. The first annexation is the urban village. It's also known as the Taylor Ranch. And if you look at this map, you'll notice that the annexation area, which is the yellow area which surrounds the red area, is located along US 41 and River Road and the future interstate connector. This annexation area added approximately 7,000 acres to the city. Approximately 30% of that acreage is devoted to what the planners call activity center. That's where the industrial commercial land uses can go, and that's in the red area. The second annexation area is known as the Glosson-Carlton Ranch, and that's approximately 9,000 acres. And if you look at the map again, you'll notice that it's over in this area. This is I-75, and this is Toledo Blade. And again, the red area denotes the area for commercial industrial, and that is also approximately 30%.
What's the green area up there?
Okay, the green area is a conservation open space area, and that is where one of the natural systems remains pretty much intact today. That is true on the Panacea development. That is also true along the Myakkahatchee Creek, and it's also true in the urban village where we have the Greenway corridor. That's where the natural system is. I'd also like to add that on the Carlton annexation area, this area is large lot estate type of residential development. The reason it's large lot, quite frankly, Gene, you brought up the environmental issues. It's large lot to try to mitigate or reduce the impact on the environment. Would like to add that remember that our land area was, for commercial industrial, was 5% before the property owners requested these annexations. And the national average is 17%. With the annexations, or the annexations have increased the city's percentage to approximately 11%, which gets us much closer to balancing our tax base.
Okay. All right. You gave us a little rundown on the Clausen property. Maybe just finish that up. We have about a minute to go before we have to go to the next break. So if you just finish up on the Clausen tract, I'd appreciate that.
Sure. I'd be glad to. This, again on the map, it's bounded by the city on the south and the west, this is I-75. You'll notice that the red area for the commercial industrial takes advantage of the I-75 frontage, the visibility from I-75. It's also bounded on this side by the city, and then this is Northport Estates. It's bounded on the north by the Longino Ranch, which I understand the county has purchased the development right easements. So that won't be developed. That's preserved to some degree. And of course, on this side is DeSoto County. So from a delivery of services perspective, Gene, it makes a lot of sense for the city to extend the city services into the area. It would be difficult at best for the county to extend services from way to the north through the Longino Ranch to this area. So in a sense, it became a county enclave.
What's an enclave? Just real quick, because we have to take a break.
An enclave is a piece of property that is surrounded by the city limits. So it's a small piece of county property surrounded by the city. The issue there is delivery of services.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sam, and we'll be right back.
There's a rumor that small-town America has all but disappeared.
Life is great, Northport.
Northport is the last Mohican. This is the place. This is going to be the last undeveloped region. The city government itself is so pro-growth, and it's just like everything is in the right place at the right time for Northport. They're very open-minded, they're very honest, and they're very fair.
Disappeared? You've just seen evidence to the contrary. We call it Northport.
Welcome back to the final phase of our show, Northport, A View from Here. When we ended up the last segment, we were talking about the Clausen property out in the northeast part of the city. Before we move on, I'd like to ask one question. It was my understanding, as I read in the newspaper and at some meetings, that there was the opportunity of a water reservoir out there also, because, you know, after all, water and is a big issue in today's world in Florida with drought and all. Can you answer that question for us, Sam?
Yeah, I'd be glad to, Gene. Basically, on this 9,000 acres, there is a slough or a creek that runs north and south. And if you look on the map, the creek, and this is a man-made creek now, actually a ditch, but it drains down to the Snover Waterway and drains to this point. When we were researching this area, we found that this portion of the ranch had been impacted quite a bit by agricultural uses and then some mining that has taken place. So the idea then, or the opportunity was then identified to basically go in and along this man-made ditch to dig the material. It's basically a borrow pit. When the borrow pit is done, then it becomes a surface water reservoir for the city that will drain into the city's second or its next planned water treatment plant. Right now, Gene, we're looking at that possibility. Of course, it's a long road to go because you have to go through the permitting. You have to make sure that you don't materially lower the water table, which could damage the environment, which certainly we don't want that to happen. But the opportunity is there.
Great. Let's hear a little bit more then about the annexation over next to the state forest, the Taylor Ranch.
Okay, great. The Taylor Ranch, or also known as the Urban Village, and again, if you look at the map, it's this area. Again, River Road, 41, the planned interstate connector, and the extension of Minnesota Beach Road. The the urban village has been designed for the activity center to be around the two major intersections, and then residential surrounding the activity center. I would like to highlight for you, Gene, this portion of the urban village that has been designated for a office park. In fact, staff understands that a major corporation desires to move its corporate headquarters to that site. What this means for Northport is approximately 1,300 new jobs, providing an average income of around $30,000. The corporate headquarters will be housed in approximately a 30,000 square foot building. Of course, Gene, you know, these plans are very, very preliminary, and they may change. But I bring this up because it serves as a wonderful example of the city's initiatives to bring the city's tax base more into balance, so the residents don't have to shoulder a disproportionate burden of the taxes. And also, quite frankly, so people can live close to work, as was shown on the map, they can live close to shopping, and they can live close to recreation. The third annexation, which is really the smallest one, is the Warm Mineral Springs Spa. That is just the springs itself. There was a couple vacant parcels were annexed for future residential, but basically it was a spa area. And this is planned to be very, very low intensity. The end uses will take advantage of the healing properties of the waters in the springs. I understand that there will be a few villas around the springs, a conference center for education, and I also understand that the spring will remain open to the public.
We have about a minute and a half to go. I'm going to just leave it open to you to add anything that you feel is very important and critical for our folks to know about, and the floor is yours.
Well, thanks, Gene. Yeah, I'd like to address two issues very quickly. The first one is, if the audience has any questions, they are more than welcome to give us a call. And that number is 426-8484.
Okay.
Okay, 426-8484. I'm sure there's questions about infrastructure items and other questions, and we'll be more than happy to address them. I'd also like to make the point that all of the city's planning efforts, from the original comp plan to the plans for these annexation areas, gets reviewed by the state agencies and the surrounding counties and the Regional Planning Council. Quite frankly, Gene, we look forward to that, because that's an opportunity for the other agencies to review our plans, because we suffer from the disease of too close to the forest, can't see the trees many times. And it also provides the opportunity for the other agencies to better our coordination of our plans with their plans. So we really welcome those kind of comments. In the past, it's worked wonderfully. The region.
Okay. I live in Northport, and I want your plan to be the best. But with that, I must say thank you very much for coming today, and this is Northport, a view from here. Thank you all.